So this week, I wanted to start with something I suggested last week. Did anyone see something that was well designed this week that you could share with the class? Like if you saw a website or something, maybe you could throw that in there. If you saw a billboard, um, anything like that, we could possibly look up. I I thought about this week. I'd like to get people to participate a little bit more. And so I am toying with the idea of if you present something to the class, then you can skip an assignment. I'm thinking about doing that. If so, that's an option. If you want to skip an assignment, you could present something to the class. So I'll just throw that out there. Um, so maybe give you a little bit more incentive to uh, bring something with you to class. So here we go. I'll bring this up.
Yeah, that was mine. Um, this is just something this is part of my this is where I live, just on the other side of the Wasatch Front, in Helper, Utah. And it's a pretty art focused community here. This is, I don't know, I don't want to keep talking, but I just suggested this because I love seeing this. Because again, the community is pretty art focused, and this is like one of the first fiberglass statues. And this guy is kind of like, it's not great design, but I think it is an example of design where I don't know, as any sort of like art forward thinking people, I guess, like this model is seen around America only like 8 times, and they all have different so this guy had the pickaxe for mining, which is a big part of our town. But there's also a Big John that has like a grocery bag, or like they all have different, it's basically like a, almost like a, I don't know, like you can like swap out their utensils, not utensils, but like their tools. It's almost like a Polly Pocket, or like a,
Oh, funny.
yeah. So there's like this, and I think that's good design where like they made a mold and they're all this scale, but you can see there's a couple of them with like grocery bags, and I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
There's a certain, I think, value to design that it can be replicated. Um, and in the 60s when this was erected, like fiberglass was kind of a unique material, and I don't know.
Yeah, they probably weren't as worried about safety back then either.
Yeah, totally.
It's funny. I think you probably went around because I worked with fiberglass a little bit in my life, and it I can't say it stinks, but the smell of it is really strong. And like
Yeah.
if I'm doing it in my yard, I'm pretty sure everybody in my neighborhood could smell it. So it's
Well, it's
funny when the
layers and layers. You can't just do one layer of fiberglass. You have to, it's a buildable material.
yeah, so it's funny with this. I can imagine for for a for a good bit, it probably smelled like fiberglass for quite a
Oh, like,
while.
yeah, off gassing. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
funny. So, but it's cool that someone came up with this idea and then have these things around.
Yeah.
So,
And it's in front of our local library, which is like the cutest, smallest thing, but it was part of the very
so
like
how tall is that? It
I
looks
would say
like
it's about 40 feet. Yeah.
40 feet. Okay,
I
so
would say it's 3 stories high at least. Like, so, don't know, maybe yeah, 25 to 30.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty tall.
Oh, yeah, no, that's cool. It's better that it's that tall because it's hard to tell how big it is from that particular angle because you could just get right down on the ground and take that picture and make, you know what I'm saying? Even with that building in the background,
Yeah.
unless there's somebody standing next to it, you could make that look all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, maybe.
So,
Yeah, it definitely like Leon saying, yeah, fourth perspective because it is kind of designed that way. I guess I
yeah,
would say it's at least like shoot,
well,
I don't even know now. Now I'm
yeah,
like it's at least three of me. I would say four of me. So like,
yeah. So you can see here, this is a better perspective here of how tall it is.
I
Like
mean, it's
both of these, you're right, and it is reaching up to what looks like the third floor. I'm gonna get like a little action figure guy and try to do that same thing with an action figure to make it look like it's tall when it's really small.
yeah.
But
I
then,
would say at least like 30 feet. I don't
oh,
know.
oh yeah, it probably
Yeah.
it yeah, it's probably you can tell that it's tall from some of these other perspectives. TripAdvisor. So yeah, no, this is great. This is the kind of thing that we should be talking about is, and then think about some of the problems that they were they did they I'm assuming they sold it to the city and then the city built it and decided what, like you're saying, what tool that they were going to put in his hand.
Right. Yeah. And it's all one piece. So I remember at least what I've heard just because it's small town. So just you hear things and it was all one piece and put on a 18 wheeler. So it's just interesting because
Oh, interesting.
yeah, it's not pieces because you would think this something like this would be like, you know, at least two pieces or three pieces that you kind of connect, but it's all one solid mold. So,
It's interesting. Yeah.
but
Yeah, and
that's
it probably it,
it's
yeah,
it's always nice to walk by because it's pretty interesting. You did
yeah, and
tired of seeing it.
so what one of the things in this class is we want to talk about like some of the design like you were saying, you like if I was going to build it, I would do what you were saying, build it, bring it there in pieces and then put it together.
Hmm.
But they must have whatever they were doing to manufacture that, they wanted to just ship it on an 18 wheeler, and maybe it was it was like more economical then. I don't know to
Probably.
move it around that way. I wonder if you could put it on a train car.
Yeah,
That,
trains are a big thing here, so that was it. Could have been that. I thought it was a like yeah freight, just like cars, but yeah.
there's just some interesting design elements you're going to have to overcome doing that. But you're right. It's good that they've designed it in such a way that he could change his tool. So an interesting. So no, I appreciate that. So yeah, and the fact that it's in the town, and so I would assume even if I had never been to the town when I got there, I'd say there's some mining around here someplace. You know?
Yeah, it's a big yeah, it's a big mining town.
Yeah. So no, I appreciate that. Oh, so Leon, did you see this car, or you've posted a car in the? Oh, hold on. Let's look at that. Hold on, I'll bring up the picture. Oh, that's not. Oh, this is fun.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, sorry, I had to hook my mic up. It wasn't working, but yeah, so I was saying that someone that I follow, I think it's really cool. He has a bunch of work like this, but he takes basically he builds the foregrounds in different like bushes and grass and different roads and things like that, and takes probably fairly expensive like $100 or $200 toy cars. Like they have to kind of look as real as possible. Although you can do it with some Hot Wheels and stuff like that, but obviously the more detail you can get into, your foreground element, it's gonna come across as a lot more realistic. But yeah, then he takes it and takes these pictures in front of places and makes them seem like they're there, and I just think that's super cool.
Oh, so he knows where this place is, and
So
he
he
just
he's there. He's there. He just sets that on the ground and then gets lower and then puts that in the background so it makes it look like that car is there. And then like those other two cars, like he probably added a little bit of motion blur to them in Photoshop
oh
to make
right.
them. But yeah, so there. But that's just a picture with that in the background.
Oh, okay, so he
So he's taking a toy and making it look like it's real life,
like
like
it's a real
real stuff.
car.
Yeah, like you were talking about with the force perspective stuff.
Oh yeah, no, this is really cool.
So yeah, you can see that table that he built. That's the road, and it's not a real road. It's literally just he takes foam and paints it. There's one pit photo that you don't have pulled up. Oh yeah, that one there. So he takes foam. That's actually just foam board, and he paints it, and then adds some texture and stuff on it like that, and it sells it for the real thing.
No, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's really cool what he's figured out, but that he's actually done this. I think it's crazy the leaves that he puts on there, whatever he's using to make it look like leaves. He's done such a good job.
Totally.
That is awesome. That is so cool. A ton of work. Does the guy say what he does for a living?
I bet. I don't know. I want to say that so I follow him on Instagram, but I came across a Facebook post once. I feel like he said that he was like an engineer or something like that. I don't quite remember.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is great because we look at all these design things or limitations that he has to overcome, but he's so and so creative. I think there's so many people out there like that that if we just try, we'll be able to figure something out. That is, yeah, that's just amazing.
Yeah, and I put the link to his Instagram in the chat if anybody else wants to see more of his work, but I just every time he posts something I'm just amazed. Like he just does a lot of cool stuff. So, anyways.
Yeah, no, that I've seen the one where there's a guy that takes little people and puts them in situations. And there are actually some of those in the book. But this is even yeah, I want to find out more about this guy. What's motivating him to do that? So, no, I appreciate both of those perspectives. Just send me an email and we'll figure out some way like that you can get out of an assignment for that because those yeah, these are awesome. And this is way better than we're going to talk about Unity a little bit, but this is way more fun talking about stuff that's happening in the real world than what's happening in our book.
And you can in the design space too, you can really consider so I kind of do some miniature scale photography stuff as well. It's kind of different. I do a lot of macro stuff, but um, people make uh, dioramas is what they are. Like the thing that he built for those cars is also a diorama. But anyways, people build models for like hotel rooms or like if you've seen Zoolander and he's like, what is that? A school for ants? That
Oh
little
yeah.
that little model that they have, like they can go for $1 million. So you can you can see how it might start off as kind of a fun, like, gimmicky kind of game thing or something to play around with as a kid, but if you put enough time and effort into it and you utilize the design space, I think you can make a living off something like that in the future.
Interesting. Yeah, I pulled up his Instagram. This is cool. I want to show this what he's done. So this is kind of cool. He just shows. Yeah, that is amazing how that ended up. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So, and the other reason that I want people to bring this in is because as you see these things, you will get new ideas. Like, Leon, it's awesome that you brought that up because, I mean, I remember that little part in Zoolander, but I had no idea that people were, doing that, like maybe as a hobby, but doing it, and making money. So that's really cool. But it just gives a new perspective on ways that if you're creative, like Leon, if you're doing this, if you just keep doing it and you like it, at some point something may happen, and you can make a living out of it. Or it may just be something you do your whole life and never make a living. Because me and my brothers, when I was in high school, so this was in the mid '80s, we started making these things called skimboards, and we liked it a lot. Let's see, but and you do it at the beach, but you can do it on rivers too. So if you've been down to St. George, they do it on the river in St. George. But we we started doing it, and it was a hobby, and we've had a ton of fun doing it. And we hoped at some point it would make us money, but it's my brother's kind of bitter about it now. He's like, we never made any money. We helped tons of people. I mean, when I say hundreds of kids make skimboards. Growing up, we worked with scout troops, we worked with the city of St. George, and you can buy skimboards in some of the sports shops down there, but we still have fun doing it, but we never made money. So if you can find something you enjoy doing like we did, we've had a lot of fun, but never made any money. So you can go both ways, but I would say if you find something you like doing, just keep doing it. If you make money, fun. If not, then you still enjoyed what was getting there.
And on that note, I just think that it's important to kind of note that the world is changing, evolving, and with technology and AI and robotics and stuff, like a lot of jobs are going away. And and I could be wrong about this, but I kind of feel like so I have a few kids, and as a parent, you gotta guide them and into a job, right? You want them to make some money at some point and be able to survive. So, you think of all the jobs that we've been told. So I'm 43, and I don't know how old you are, but probably, somewhere up there. And the kids these days that are looking to get careers, high schoolers and whatever, like, what do you tell them to do? And I think my best answer is, like you were saying, like, find something you love and then basically figure out how to make money like that, because I think that a lot of jobs are going away, but um, it's going to be a hard market coming up in the future, I think, for people.
Well, what's interesting is the trades, and Salt Lake Community College has actually put a lot of resources into the trades. If you go to the Redwood campus, um, the industrial building used to be this old thing that looked like it was built in the '70s, but in the last couple of years, they've updated those buildings. They are state of the art. The welding facility over there is amazing. Um, it and so they've done a lot over there. And the reason I say that is because these trades can make a lot of money. Like, I'm not sure what a journeyman electrician makes, but I think they probably An electrician probably starts in the $20 an hour range and then goes up from there. Like, but there is what I do for my day job is I help companies customize accounting systems, which sounds funny. But I've worked with a lot of electric companies in the last couple of years, and and granted, this is in places like New York, but there's also people in, you know, in the middle America that are making $70 or $80 an hour as an electrician. And if you want to be a lineman, those are the people that um, work on the high voltage stuff, just everything between really everything almost to your house, but the high transmission lines, most of those guys are way over $100 an hour. If in California, I think for a lineman in California, if you're overtime, it's like $300 an hour, which is a ton of money. So there's those types of jobs if you like doing that. Like I have a cousin who works for um it's funny, he didn't want to tell me how much he was making, but he works for Rocky Mountain Power, and he started out as a lineman and now he's like a lineman supervisor. And he said, I had to take a pay cut for a little bit to take some training, but once I took the training, he said, I got an $80 an hour raise. And I'm like, what are you making before to get an $80 an hour raise? And so, and he grew up down in Price, Utah. And as far as I know, he didn't go to any college. He just worked for Utah, or for, what is it? It's Pacific Corp, but Rocky Mountain Power. So he's worked for Rocky Mountain Power for his whole career. So electrician, I think, is a good thing to do. Becoming a pilot can kind of be expensive, but that's a decent career to get into, and it has its ups and downs. But yeah, if you just kind of look around for things, then there's options out there that I would have never considered being an electrician. I would have thought, oh, they can't make that much money, but they're making a ton of money now. So, but yeah, but it's really about getting out there. And Leon, that's awesome that you've I had no idea that was going on. But if you can get especially your kids to explore those different things, there's all kinds of ways that you can make a living out of doing like what you're saying, that what you like to do. So somehow you can incorporate that. But then there's other times where just figuring out how to make just figuring out how to like what you do, it's also another skill.
Yeah,
So,
that's totally right.
and
Especially if you want to join the military or something like that.
yeah. So this is just one thing. I had a friend who joined the Marines, learned how to fly helicopters, but and somehow he got promoted to be a colonel. Well, he was doing stuff over in the Middle East and Iraq and Bosnia. He's older, but when he, as a full colonel in the Marines, he was making $150,000 a year, and that was almost 20 years ago. And so then when he retired, he got $75,000 a year after he retired for the rest of his life. And then he became like a president of a company. So I have no idea how much money he's making, but so he did just fine being in the military. And I would have never thought that you could make that kind of money being in the military. But the other funny thing about at the end of his career where I met him was I was living in South Carolina, and he was the recruiter at the University of South Carolina for the Marines. So basically what he did is he talked to, and he ran the ROTC at University of South Carolina, but the University of South Carolina had their own 18-hole golf course. And so he said he spent most of every day playing golf with students, trying to recruit them into the Marine. He said, well, they forced him. He's like, they are forcing me to retire. He's like, I'm on vacation every day. And he's like, they're kicking me out. It was so funny. So, and I would have never thought that that's what would happen to you if you joined the military. But that's an option. I don't know how he got into that, but he did. So,
Individual experiences definitely vary.
oh yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, I don't know how he got into that situation, but he figured out his way through that, and it turned out pretty good for him. So, well, let's get to we'll talk about Unity. So part of this class is almost like a language class. So we're learning. So last week we learned about um, the design process, and this time, so this is the first thing. This is Unity, and so in art, they're just talking about, well, it says harmony or unity, where you're bringing things into a work of art or into your design that makes them unified. So on this particular uh, work of art, what makes it unified? What are some of the things?
Did you ask what makes a work
Yeah,
of art unity?
yeah, what makes this unified? Like, what are some of the things that bring this, like, what are some
To
unifying
make it
elements in it?
cohesive. So
Yeah,
yeah, you can there's all kinds of things in design like contrast and colors and composition and uh, depth of field. Um, uh, there's um, there's lines, leading lines, and all kinds of things. But colors, obviously, the red is prominent and it kind of draws your eye in. But then you have kind of a leading line with like the buckets going into the back. But all the colors kind of are cohesive, like reflecting off the different beige or tan tones kind of around, and so I think that's what
right.
work together.
Yeah, so you're right. So the lines in the painting, they're like the prominent lines in the painting, they're all going the same direction. We've got the shadows, they're all going one direction. All of that unifies, and then it's just cans of paint. So the fact that they've got multiple cans of paint, but the color really is kind of, they've just got those unifying colors. There's just several colors in there, but they're using, different um, values of those colors to bring that the unified. And so this is one of those language things that you can learn as you start to look at design. You start to think, oh, this is more unified because they're bringing these things, bringing these elements in. And so that's one of the things we're trying to teach, is this language of being. So in this painting, what makes it unified? Or I should say painting, picture.
The blue overall tone.
Yeah, just the blue. That interesting with this.
It looks
Uh,
kind of mirrored.
True. Yeah, this one's got two like opposite sides, the dark and the light. So it's funny, there are several paintings that they bring up again and again in this class. This is one of them that you will see multiple times. There's the So this is interesting. What makes this unified? You actually have to read the description on this one to understand what all of those things are. So on this particular one, this is pumpkin tendrils. And so the artist just went out and took pictures of those. And so that's the thing that, unless you know what it is, you're like, this isn't really that unified, but he brings that together with that. Just like, look at what pumpkins are creating. So look at this. What are some things that unify this design? I should pull it up like that.
I'd say maybe the white highlight, like everything else is kind of muted.
True. So what is he doing with what is the artist doing with the white?
Your eyes are drawn to the brightest part of an image.
True.
So the
So
people kind of stand out more than anything else. But I don't know what that have to do with the unification of it.
yeah, so what do you like if you saw this without reading the description, what would you make the assumption? What assumption could you make about those 4 girls?
Well, they're probably well off, it seems.
That's probably true because somebody's having them painted.
Well, I mean, those vases are huge too, and their
That's
dresses,
true.
and they seem kind of proper. I don't know.
So, but I mean, when I see it, I'm making the assumption that they're in the same family. And so I think with the white, the painter wants us to realize they're related because because all the white is the same. So this is somebody's daughters. Yeah, it's interesting. So then we have this, then we've got the font. And I don't know how, did they have a font class at Slick? It seems like a lot of art classes. Yeah, so
They have a typography class, yeah.
the typography class. It's really font class, but it makes it sound more sophisticated if you say typography. But this is one thing where even though those are different weights on the font, that's one of the things that brings unity into a design. That when I first started with design classes, the teacher said never use more than 3 fonts on a design. Well, and obviously that's a kind of more of a rule of thumb, because if you get more than that, it starts to, and he said, starts to look like a ransom note. So this Gestalt is this theory of visual psychology. And so they talk about, this is part of the unity. Like if we see something like this, they're a little bit unified, but when we see something where, like Leon was saying, where the lines are all the same direction, we start to, like here, it just looks like objects. But if we look here, I'm looking between those two. If we look here, then, I mean, for me, I start to see like a city with a street and the whole. And so just all of this, all of these different things, this looks unified because they look similar. They're all squares. this looks unified because the lines are all going the same direction. So, and it's just interesting. We've got these different shapes, but they're communicating ideas with these different shapes. So this one's interesting. With the shapes on this one, what do you see? Somebody if you see something there, throw it in the chat.
I mean, it kind of makes me think about a balloon animal or something.
Yeah. So, and maybe it's because I've looked at this before, but I forget this and then remember it every semester. But if it kind of looks like a face. And so, and maybe that's just me seeing that. And the title is My Funny Valentine, but the shapes are all unified and they've just got the black, it's the black and the white. So and it's interesting in business classes that I've taken, we've talked about architecture. So why do places use this type of architecture? Any ideas?
Like in modern times, or why did they?
Like, why does anybody use this type of architecture? Like back in, so this is from Paris. It says 1861, 1875. So why did they do it now? And then why are they still building buildings that look like this?
It contains like more artful expression than most buildings you see.
True. But what, like, if that was a place that, like, this is the opera house, um, uh, kind of what are your expectations if you see a building like this?
It's gonna be fancy.
It's gonna be it's gonna be fancy. So I think we look at this and we make the expect, at least for me, I'm thinking, if I'm gonna go something somewhere, I'm gonna probably have to dress up for that. This is, you know, but it's just interesting how, and I think this was, for the last couple of 100 years, this has been a popular type of architecture that gives this type of impression. It's funny how, like, the governor's mansion here you can see it on South Temple. it, it's got these same pillars. And it's funny when you see people's houses built with pillars, because I always look at that and say, what is the purpose of the pillars? And I think it all goes back to this, is like, I'm trying to portray a certain fancy lifestyle. So this is proximity we're talking about. So here they're not together, but if you put them together, they are more of a cohesive unit versus if they're farther away. So this is kind of fun. Talk about the unity there, but Here's one where we've just got shapes. Colors are similar. Or all the lines or the so this one is just repetition. And then here with this, they're just trying to show you, yeah, it's kind of together, but if you build something like this, then it looks more unified. This is another one that shows up a couple of times in the book. I think the artist designed this in such a way to just keep the audience's attention for a while as we explore the different elements of that. Three-dimensional design here with Unity. Then it talks about grids. Here's an here. It's interesting that they talk about website design there. This is a you don't see many websites designed like that now. That's showing that they shouldn't have thrown that in there because that's old. Just this checkerboard. Some Unity, but not quite as much as the checkerboard. And then this is a little bit more. And here's one where they're kind of going with the checkerboard idea, but also with the colors. Now this is what this design, this painting right here is one that gets used lots in this book because there's lots of different things. So you can talk about Unity with this one because of the doors and the windows and the glass and all the lines going the same direction. Talk about this when we get into balance. That's interesting what the artist has done with this. Is he's unified some of the same elements to create a sense of motion here with what's going on.
Yeah, if you you know took a quarter of a second of video or whatever, and you know took those 24 frames of video or whatever and put it down into 4 and overlapped them, this is kind of what you would get.
Right. So as we look at these, we should all be gaining like a perspective, like, okay, how could I use this in my designs to communicate these same types of a thing. Then obviously here, these are buildings, but it's interesting because they've really tried to push the same, because in real life, those, I mean, if you saw those in real life, they would probably be different colors, but the artist has worked hard to get these to be a more similar color to unify this design. And then here with the ceramics, it's more about it's about the, I want to say angles, but not really angles, but just the shapes of these different things. I was talking to a potter recently, and he's saying if you're trying to make a set for something, you don't have to make them all alike. But he said they all need to look like kids in the Jones family. He's like, they might not look alike, but if you see them and if they've all got red hair and they're all skinny, he's like, you know, they came from the Jones family. So this is the same thing. These 4 items, just because of the shapes that the designers made, they look like they're related. And then that's just a crazy amount of people. I always like this picture of these two, and we're assuming that they're identical twins, but you look at them closer and you start to see that there's differences. But I think whoever took this picture made sure they were wearing the same clothes too, because if they were wearing 2 different things, they would not look as much alike. But the fact that they've both got the same blouse or dress with the same pattern even makes them more unified here. So this is the idea that variety brings unity. We've got some of the same colors going on, and that's helping to unify this, even though these are wildly different shapes. I like this concept, the variety through chaos. I mean, unity through chaos. Sorry, it's a variety. But this is unity through chaos. Just because we've got all those different signs posted up there. Interesting. And then just suburbia someplace. Planned unity of housing subdivision. They've tried to make them look different, but if you look, they've all got the same. They've all got the same windows. I lived in a development when I was in junior high that the builder had built them all, and this is before technology had gotten a hold of the garage door openers. We could, as kids, we would take our garage door opener in a subdivision that looked like a lot like this, and we'd just go down and we could see about every 12th house we could open the garage with our garage door opener. So that's one of the risks of. So it's interesting how on this subway map, and it's interesting if we look at this is really not done to scale, but it just helps people understand how everything is connected. And I would, if you've ever tried to do something like this, it took this person some serious time to figure out how that all worked together, and then to get all the. So that's also something too, is you are critiquing each other's work in this class or giving feedback. Notice how much time it looked like it may have taken someone. So in this class, that's as I evaluate. So there's creativity as part of it. How much time I think you put into the design is another thing. But then there's been other times where I could tell that it hasn't taken someone very long, but the skill in which they put it together is just, astounding. And so even though there wasn't a ton of work, just how good it looks. So you've got all of those elements coming into play when you look at something like this. Like I can tell, because I've tried to do things like this. This took a lot of time. There's no way someone did this quickly. And I would like to know how many drafts this person went through to get something that looked that good. And maybe somebody does this for a living and makes a lot of money doing it. I don't know. So this is interesting with film. If you've ever watched a movie and the person they call him the director of photography, and the goal in a movie like this, the director of photography setting up these shots. So what are some of the things about this frame from the movie that brings unity?
The color palette for sure. I think
For sure.
the era, you could look at all the different clothing and, I mean, I guess it's a little bit different being, in quote unquote future times, but you can see that they're all from the same time and place. Whereas, if you saw some of the way that we dress, if that was mixed in along with there, then maybe one person or a couple people would look out of place, but everybody looks to be wearing the same type of clothing from that era. And even, the type of things on the wall look like old and stuff like that. There's cigarettes on the table. It's definitely some unity, I guess, for the timepiece, maybe.
True. And as they're making a movie, they have to think about all of that stuff. And the guy who's the director of the photography, he has to think about all of that. He looks at the frame and says, "Oh, this is what maybe we need to change something. That looks out of place."
Yeah, so they say that you're responsible for everything that's within the frame, and just so I had my I'm a graduate from the Slick Film program, and I had my first feature film in the Utah Film Festival 2 weeks ago, and it
Oh,
got
cool.
three nominations: Best Actor, Best Ensemble Cast, and Best Cinematographer, which is me. So I'm really proud of
Nice.
that. Yeah,
Dude, that's awesome.
yeah, pretty proud of it.
That is really cool. There's a lot of work that goes in that. If and the whole idea, because I've talked to a guy who was director of photography, and he said the goal is that just like they did here, you could take any frame out of the movie and make it and hang it on somebody's wall, and they would like it there because it's so well done. So just like they did here.
I think there's some unity in just like the relationships as well, as far as focusing on the character or whoever has their back to us, there's some sort of unity in the
That's a
focus.
good point.
Like the people are throwing focus, but having a unified focus at the person with their back to us at the table, which I think is a, I don't know, it does create a sense of unity where it's like, oh, she's like saying something like we
Oh,
spilling.
right. No, that's a good point too. Because we didn't really talk about that, but that's another thing that we'll talk about later is focus. Is in the design, where is the focus?
Mhm.
So so Leon, if you've graduated with the film, what are you doing in my class?
You know,
So,
so I have a couple degrees, but I have about three years left on my GI Bill. I found out, so I'm just taking
oh,
classes to sort of
nice.
um just learn more. Anything that you can do. So I freelance photography for a living for most of what I do, but anything that you can garner from anything. Like if I went to a nursery and learn more about plants, there's just, something that you can take from that. And I think that just being a more well-rounded person makes you a better kind of anything.
No, that's a really good point to bring up. The more experiences that we have, the better we're going to be able to solve the problems in our lives. That's really what it's about. The more exposure you get, there was, and I'm drawing a blank on this, but there was a book where, um, well, there's a book called Range, and it talks about this, and maybe it was in the book Range, and there was there was a consultant that was working with two different labs um, of of like bioengineer type people. And the one lab had a more diverse group of people that were working on the problem, and they solved the problem like 2 years before the other lab solved it. And this consultant, because he couldn't share what, so he was watching this other lab try to figure out what this other, the lab that had the more diverse group of people solved the problem faster, just because they'd been in more, that had more different experiences, where this other group, they'd all kind of gone through the same experiences. They had a harder time finding the solution to their problem. And so I like that you bring that up, because really the more we get exposed to, the more we can relate that to other situations. I remember when I was uh, just out of high school and in college, I would ask all the teachers, how is this going to relate to me in my life? And none of the teachers really came up with a good answer to that. And so that's been a question that I've had throughout my life. Why in college did they make us take, like if I'm doing art, why do I have to take biology? Or if I'm doing biology, why do I have to take art? Why are they letting me take a music class? How is that going to help me? So, but the one answer that I've heard since then is that the more e- the more experiences you have, especially in school, the more ways you see to solve problems. So each different, whether you're in science, and that's general, but whether you're in biology or chemistry, or whether you take a welding class, or whether you take art, each one of those areas is going to solve problems a little bit differently. And you can use those problem solving skills throughout any um, any other vocation that you choose. So it's interesting to see, like, if somebody's if someone's a designer and they may be really good at Photoshop. And I've worked with designers, because dealing with technology, I've worked with some people that are phenomenal artists. But every time they give me, I'm like, okay, we need to have these types of graphics on a website. They give me some huge image that I have to, well, I know how to do it because I can do Photoshop. I have to bring it into Photoshop, or there's lots of other tools now to make that image smaller, a lot smaller. And I'm like, why didn't somebody just tell you that if you're going to be putting this on the web, the picture needs to be, you don't need it to be, 10,000 pixels or 10,000 pixels wide or a 10,000 pixel square something. If you're putting it on the web, it just needs to be 72 dpi or 150 dpi, but you can strip away a lot of the size by just knowing where it's going to be on the website. And so I've had to deal with that a lot, where I wish they would have, just like me, I've worked on both sides. And so anytime I'm going to design a photo, I've got to find out where it's going. If I know it's going on a billboard, then I'm going to put as much resolution into that as possible. But if I know it's going on a web page, I'm going to make it smaller. And so those are just through my own experiences, seeing what, and that's just a really basic example. But just the more we get exposed to, the more we see how different problems are solved. So that's, I think the more, and that's great that you're taking advantage of your GI Bill and getting some of that experience. That's really cool. So that's it for today. I appreciate everyone's input. And then Leon, just let us know where we can go watch your movie.
It's still have it. It's gonna be in the Zepstone Film Festival as well, and possibly some other ones, but it won't release to the public until October. But yeah, really excited about it, and
Oh, that's cool.
it's about 2.5 years from start to finish to make it, and we used a lot of slick people on it, probably 15 different people I went to school with and stuff. So it's
Oh, cool.
really cool.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. But I think, Leon, were you here when I mentioned that my dad worked in the film industry for a while? Were you in there?
I think. Oh yeah,
So
I was. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, my dad did special effects, and him and his brother tried to make a movie, but it's the worst. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I would never recommend it to anyone. It's so funny. But it took them a couple years to make it. But that was back in the film day before there were digital video editors or anything like that. They shot it in 16 millimeter film.
Nice.
So, all right. So that's it for everybody. If you want to stick around and ask me any questions, you can do that. Or you're welcome to take off and we'll see you. So just so everyone knows, we just meet on Wednesday. I didn't realize until a little bit later that I didn't get on right at 7 on Monday and everybody was gone by then. So apologize for that. So thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.